A pleasant afternoon to everyone. Group number 2 is reporting right now, and today we'll be presenting our report on engineering management, which is about the crucial role of a manager, decision making. To begin with, I would like to introduce Al Christian Parungaw to start the discussion.
The subtopics under the decision making are the following. Number 1. Decision making as a manager. Number 2. What is decision making? Number 3. The decision making process. Number 4. Approaches in solving problems. Number 5. Quantitative models for decision making. Okay, first, decision making as a manager. So, una, decisions must be made at various levels in the workplace. Sa iba't ibang stages ng management process, maraming nagaganap na paggawa ng mga desisyon. Halimbawa, kung may certain resources na kailangan gamitin, kailangan ang manager ay gumawa ng tamang desisyon, gaya ng mag-authorize siya ng angkop na tao para doon sa gagamiting resources. Pangalawa, decision making is a responsibility of the engineer manager. It is understandable for managers to make wrong decisions at times. Pero kung ang manager ay isang wise manager, ma-identify niya agad kung magli-lead ba yung nagawang desisyon sa isang pagkakamali at may tatama niya ito agad. Makakagawa siya ng appropriate actions o ng timely decisions based sa data na meron siya. Last, management must strive to choose a decision option as correctly as possible. Since ang management ang may power na gumawa ng decision, sila ang responsible sa anumang outcome o kahihinatnan kahihinatnan ng kanilang mga decision. The higher the management level is, the bigger and the more complicated decision making becomes. Kaya ang decision ng management o ng manager ay dapat based sa sound arguments at nabuo gamit ang factual data at evidence. Okay, para naman sa decision making, here is Luna Megido.
Nakamute ka ata, Luna.
Luna?
Sorry. So, what is decision making? So, decision making is defined as the process of identifying and choosing alternative courses of action in a manner appropriate to the demands of the situation. So, in Tagalog po is pagpapasya. Ibig sabihin, pag-intindi sa isang sitwasyon at pagbibigay ng hatol o pasya tungo sa ikalulutas or ikabubuti ng sitwasyon or pangyayari. So, ang isang engineer ay must adopt a certain procedure designed to determine the best option available to solve certain problems. Then, it is the heart of all management function, sabi po ni Nichols. So, which is tama naman dahil mahalaga ito dahil kung walang decision making, walang planong mapoproduce, leading na maisasagawa at ma-organize at makokontrol. So, next.
Rational decision making, according to David H. Alt, is a process involving the following steps. Number 1, diagnose problem. Number 2, analyze environment. Number 3, articulate problem or opportunity. 4. Develop viable alternatives. 5. Evaluate alternatives. Number 6. Make a choice. 7. Implement decision. And number 8. Evaluate and adapt decision results.
Next. Next. Diagnose problem. If a manager wants to make an intelligent decision, his first move must be to identify the problem. So, if yung manager po ay nag-fail sa pag-identify ng problem, it will be almost impossible to succeed sa mga susunod na steps. An expert once said, identification of the problem is more or less having the problem half solved because accurate diagnosis is critical to prevent wasting precious time on the wrong course of treatment. Next slide. Analyze the environment. The environment where the organization is situated plays a very significant role in the success or failure of such an organization. It is therefore very important that an analysis of the environment be undertaken. Ang objective po ng environmental analysis is to make the managers aware and informed. So, it helps them para ma-identify the threats and opportunities before constraints which may be spelled out as either internal or external limitations. Next slide. Components of the environment. Under internal environment, the organizational activities within a firm that surrounds decision making. Next, the external environment, the variables that are outside the organization and not typically within the short-run control of top management. Next.
Step number 4 is about to develop viable alternatives. At this stage, you should have a detailed understanding of the problem and a definition of an ideal solution. At, there are usually several different ways to solve any problem or pursue any opportunity. Yung pag-jump agad from problem definition sa isang solution lang ay hindi magandang idea. Dahil malilimita nito yung options mo and robs you of the chance para makonsider yung mga advantages and disadvantages ng several alternatives. Maaari ring mawala yung chance para makombine yung mga best points of several alternative solutions. Kalimitan sinusolusyonan ng mga problema gamit yung mga ino-offer na solutions. Pero tandaan natin, yung the best alternative solutions kailangang i-considered by management. Papaano natin magagawa ito? By using a procedure with the following steps. Una, kailangan nating i-prepare ang mga list ng alternative solutions. Sunod nito, i-determine natin yung viability ng kada solutions. At pagkatapos, i-revise natin yung list. Papaano? Simple lang, tatanggalin natin yung sa tingin nating hindi valuable ang alternative solution. So pagkatapos nating ma-determine yung viability ng alternatives and ma-revise yung list, kailangan naman nating ma-evaluate yung mga natirang napili natin. They must be evaluated so that the best solution can be identified. Ang main objective kasi ng evaluation ay para ma-determine yung kanilang effectiveness in addressing the concerns, taking advantage of opportunities, and making objectives in the planning area. Isa pa para ma-determine natin of how well each alternative meets your business or personal requirements. Dahil yung mga requirements na ito ay isang key characteristics and capabilities that you feed ay necessary for your personal or business success. Proper evaluation makes choosing the right solution less difficult. Sinasabi rin na yung evaluation of alternatives ay nakadepende sa nature of the problem, the objective of the firm, and the nature of alternatives presented. Tandaan na napaka-importante ng part na ito dahil yung susunod na step ay involved na ang making a choice. Next slide, please.
Okay. After na ma-evaluate ang mga alternatives, the decision maker must now be ready to make a choice. This is the point where a decision maker must be convinced that all the previous steps were correctly undertaken. Choice making refers to the process of selecting among alternatives representing potential solutions to a problem. At this point, dapat may identify lahat ang significant consequences ng bawat choice. And to make the selection process easier, the alternatives can be ranked from best to worst on the basis of some factors like benefit, cost, or risk. Next slide. At pagkatapos makapili ng isang choice, ang susunod ay implement decision. Implementation refers to carrying out the decision so that the objectives sought will be achieved. At para magkaroon ng isang effective implementation, kailangan magkaroon o bumuo ng isang plano. Sabi nga ni Sir last time, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So, kapag wala kang plano, masasayang lang yung mga paunan yung steps. Then, at this stage, the resources must be made available para ma-implement ng maayos at ang nagawang plano. Sa resources na ito, kasama yung mga human resources at according kay Alda Stearns, they must understand and accept the plan choice and solution. Next slide. Sunod, evaluate and adapt decision results. In implementing the decision, the results expected may or may not happen. It is therefore important for the manager to use control and feedback mechanisms to ensure results and to provide information for future decisions. So, define natin yung feedback. Feedback refers to the process which requires checking at each stage of the process to assure that the alternatives generated, the criteria used in evaluation, and the solution selected for implementation are in keeping with the goals and objectives originally specified. So, sa mga feedback, kinukuha ito sa mga human resource, yung mga tauhan. So, tinatanong kung nami-meet ba yung mga criteria, ganun, or yung mga nagagawa ba ng tama yung naiplano. Then, next, control refers to the actions made to ensure that activities performed match the desired activities or goals that have been set. So, sa control, mini-make sure na naka-inline or nasa tamang daan pa rin yung ginagawa ng mga nasa resources. So, next slide. In the last stage of the decision-making process, the engineer manager will find out whether or not the desired result is achieved. If the desired result is achieved, one may assume that the decision made was good. If it was not achieved, further analysis is necessary. So yung last step na nabanggit ay mahalaga kasi pwedeng magamit yung mga so di ba nagkaroon tayo ng analysis. So yung mga results analysis, pwedeng magamit yon in the future para ma-improve yung mga possible na gagawin in the future. Or maiwasan yung mga pagkakamali na nagawa sa implementation. Next.
Ayan. Good morning. In decision making, the engineer manager is faced with problems which may either be simple or complex. To provide him with some guide, he must be familiar with the following approaches: the qualitative evaluation and quantitative evaluation. Next slide. Qualitative evaluation. This term refers to the evaluation of alternatives using intuition and subjective judgment. So, sabi ni William Stevenson sa kanyang libro na Introduction to Management Science, sinabi niya na ang qualitative evaluation tend to use when the problem is fairly simple, the problem is familiar, the costs involved are not great, and immediate decisions are needed. So kapag qualitative approach, more on nararamdaman or instinct, naka-base yung decision ng isang manager. So situational or nakabase yung decision sa kanyang kasalukuyang kaganapan. Next slide. Yeah. Next is the quantitative evaluation. This term refers to the evaluation of alternatives using any technique in a group classified as rational and analytic. So dito naman, nakabase naman yung nagiging decision ng isang engineer manager based sa numbers, figures, or sa analyzation processes. Next slide. So etong feedback as a control mechanism in the decision-making process is part of a qualitative evaluation. So, nasa step by step procedure siya na if ever na number 8 na evaluate yung result, kapag achieve yung result, ay ina-adapt natin yung naging decision na yun sa mga susunod pa rin na same situation. Pero kung hindi nagiging achieve yung result na gusto natin, i-determine natin yung mga steps kung saan tayo nagkakamali and babalik ulit tayo sa steps 1 to 7 to achieve our result. Okay, next. So, quantitative techniques are subdivided into different parts. So, una na yung inventory models. Queuing theory, network models, forecasting, regression analysis, simulation, linear programming, sampling theory, and statistical decision theory. Next. For the inventory model, it consists of several types, all designed to help the engineer manager to make decisions regarding inventory. They are as follows. A is the economic order quantity model, used to calculate the number of items that should be ordered at one time to minimize the total yearly cost of placing orders and carrying the items in the inventory. So dito, fino-foresee na ng engineer manager yung i-order ba niya na quantity ng kunyari supply or materials para sabay-sabay na rin para nare-reduce yung cost ng shipping, ng handling fee. Ayun, ganun siya. So next is production order quantity model. This is an economic order quantity technique applied to production orders. Next is the back order inventory model. This is an inventory model used for planned shortages. So kapag yung engineer manager nakikita niya yung trend ng isang product or isang yung product, nakikita niya na high demand siya, nagbaback order na siya or nag-stock na siya para meron pa siyang mailabas sakaling magkaroon ng shortages. Next is the quantity discount model, an inventory model used to minimize total cost when quantity discounts are offered by the supplier. So, parang pag pag namimili tayo, di ba? More on ang tinitingnan natin if ever kung may discount ba yung isang item para kung i-compare natin kung mas nakakamura ba tayo kung by discount yung bibili natin or hindi. Next. Next is queuing theory. It describes how to determine number of service units that will minimize both customers' waiting time and cost of service. The queuing theory is applicable to companies where waiting lines are common situations. Examples are cars waiting for service at a car service center, ships and barge waiting at the harbor for loading and unloading by the dock workers, programs to be run in a computer system that process the jobs, etc. Next. Network models. Models where large complex tasks are broken into smaller segments that can be managed independently. So it is subdivided into two. Program Evaluation Review Technique or PERT enables engineer managers to schedule, monitor, and control large and complex projects by employing 3 times estimates for each activities. So, based on my reading, itong PERT ay ginagamit more on research and development projects. Kapag wala, itong type din na decision making na ito ay para sa mga projects na based on probability or yung mga projects na noon pa lang or pioneer pa lang na ginagawa. So, kagaya ng research and development. Next is the critical path method or CPM. It uses only one time factor per activity that enables engineer managers to schedule, monitor, and control large and complex projects. So, based sa readings na nabasa ko, yung itong CPM ay ginagamit sa mga construction projects wherein repetitive to or yung mga construction project naman ay nauulit. So, itong type of decision making na CPM yung ginagamit. Next. Forecasting. Decision making based on the implications in the future. It's the collection of past and current information to make predictions about the future. In an example of forecasting, in a manufacturing firm, for example, must put up capacity which is sufficient to produce the demand requirements of customer within the next 12 months. As such, manpower and facilities to be produced before the start of the operations. To make decisions on capacity more effective, the engineer manager must provide it with data on the demand requirements for the next 12 months. This type of informations may be derived through forecasting. So sa forecasting, nagkakaroon ng study or yung trend na tinatawag na for the past trend, so parang i-compare siya kung pwede bang maulit yung trend na yun for the future. So kapag naulit, as an engineer manager, you can start on planning ahead para kapag yung season na yun ulit, ay meron kang may offer sa mga consumers. So the next.
Next, regression. Regression analysis is a proven way for determining which variables have an impact on a certain issue. Regression analysis allows you to confidently establish which elements are most important, which factors may be ignored, and how these factors interact. Regression is a statistical technique used in finance, investing, and other fields to identify the strength and nature of relationship between one dependent variable and a set of other variables. A regression analysis is typically used for one of two purposes: predicting the value of the dependent variable for individuals for whom information about the explanatory factors is known, or estimating the effect of an explanatory variable on the dependent variable. Next. Simulation. A simulation is a model that simulates the operation of a current or proposed system, providing evidence for decision making by allowing multiple scenarios or process improvement to be tested. For a more immersive experience, this can be combined with virtual reality technology. Any research or development endeavor in which researchers or developers produce a model of a real-world phenomena is referred to as a simulation. Many parts of the natural world can be converted into mathematical models, and simulation allows IT systems to replicate real-world outcomes. Next, linear programming. When a linear function is exposed to multiple restrictions, it is maximized or reducing using linear programming. A mathematical modeling technique, this method can be used to guide quantitative judgment in business planning, industrial engineering, and to a lesser extent, social and physical sciences. The manager can utilize a linear programming model to make the best use of limited resources: manpower, money, materials, skills, time, and facilities are examples of scarce resources. The decision maker then seeks to make the best decision or get the best results in the limited resources available. Next, sampling theory. The study of relationships between a population and sample chosen from the population is known as sampling theory. Only random samples are applicable to sampling theory. A population or universe can be described as a collection of entities that share a similar trait or traits for this purpose. Study of relationships between a population and sample chosen from the population is known as sampling theory. A typical sample can be obtained using a variety of approaches. Next, statistical design theory. In statistic, decision theory refers to a collection of quantitative strategies for making the best judgment. A solvable decision problem must be able to precisely define in terms of initial condition and option of courses of action, as well as their consequence. Abstract, study of making the best decision in the face of uncertainty is known as decision theory. Statistical decision theory is concerned with making decisions in the presence of statistical knowledge or data that clarifies some of the uncertainty in the decision problem. Next book.
So to end our presentation, I would like to give a quote. You cannot make progress without